Hi everyone, I'm Caitlin James from Scalp Micropigmentation Australia, and welcome to another 5-minute fast facts on Scalp Micropigmentation Pro Artist Series, where we're interviewing some amazing scalp micropigmentation artists from around the world, getting their tips and tricks on how you can get the best out of your scalp micropigmentation transformation. Today we're talking to the duo that make up the DC Micro team located in Yorkshire in the UK. Debbie is a seasoned permanent makeup artist and a scalp micropigmentation practitioner specialising and training artists in a technique called Tricopigmentation. Debbie has been an industry pioneer in the permanent makeup world, famous for her 3D glossy lip technique. As a GoldenEye micropigmentation supplier and training partner, Debbie has been invited to many training events worldwide and attended many conferences as a guest speaker. She is most well known for her training the Melina Lardi technique in tricopigmentation, a similar technique to scalp micropigmentation, but we'll cover that in detail later on in the interview. She's been a finalist for the UK Training Academy Award at each of the Team Micro Awards here in the UK, and she was a finalist for the Best UK Artist of the Year at these awards in 2019. Today we're chatting with Debbie, Clifford and Jasper from DC Micro. Welcome.
Hello, hi.
Hello, Caitlin. Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you very much for having us.
No worries. Thanks for being on the program. We're talking about something a little bit different today. We're talking about tricopigmentation.
Yes.
So, Debbie, let's start. Would you like to tell us who the lovely man sitting next to you is and what part he has in the DC Micro brand?
This is my husband, Jasper Scholtes, and we started being part of GoldenEye, how many years ago was it?
GoldenEye 7 years ago.
About 7 years ago. And that's when we started distribution and sales of products and whatnot in the English-speaking countries. So although GoldenEye is a German-based, high-quality German-based brand. So that's really our link with GoldenEye.
Yeah, brilliant. And Jasper, you're quite involved in the business, aren't you?
Yeah, as long as I do what Debbie tells me to do, it's all good. You know, I basically do all the behind the scenes work. So I do the accounts, I sort the logistics out, I do the marketing, the advertising, and try and support Debbie as much as I can as well in her job.
Yep, brilliant. And Debbie, you tend to be most well known for being the person to go to train for tricopigmentation. Would you like to explain to our listeners and viewers what is the difference between tricopigmentation and scalp micropigmentation?
It seems to be now that the word tricopigmentation has caught on as being the semi-permanent option. Originally, back in 2007, it was known as just a European generic term for scalp micropigmentation. But Melina Lardi started this model back in 2007, using a combination of an iron oxide and an organic mix to create a universal brown with a specific model of implantation to create a semi-permanent. So this is what we took on after sort of training before in different types of scalp micropigmentation. I mean, it doesn't, as we all know, it doesn't date back decades and decades and decades. So in the grand scheme of things, it's still quite a relatively new topic.
Yeah.
And it was finding something that I felt ethically was the road to follow.
Brilliant.
Yeah, Melina developed her technique in 2007, I believe, and she's put a lot of work in how the pigments have to work inside the skin, what kind of needle is best to use to get the right deposit of pigment. Also, how she spaces out the dots equidistantly, and she's based a really good teachable model around that as well. Something that we kind of were very impressed with and thought that is something that works very well for us, and have decided to train with them and work with them and their products.
Yeah, because when we first looked into it, everything we saw just seemed to go a little bit blue, or wasn't very successful. So this was a model that worked, and the end result looked good, and long time was fantastic.
Yeah, excellent. So tell us, how many sessions does it take to achieve a result using the tricopigmentation technique?
So we have to, if we sort of look at the clients and the demographic of the clients, we have the clients that go for the shave look, that are, these usually are the guys, unless you have female alopecia of some sort. And for the shaved effect, it's probably 3 sessions. So we do it on 2 consecutive days, and then following up with a month later. When it comes to clients who want density, so this could be post-hair transplant clients that just want added density, or women especially, then their expectation is to already have thicker looking hair. Yeah. So we'd probably be looking at 4 sessions then for these type of clients, really. Yeah.
Brilliant. And does it feel the same as scalp micropigmentation?
From what I believe, I think it's a little less painful. We get very, very little redness, to be quite honest. The skin can go a little bit pink. Day 2 tends to be a little bit more painful than day 1, because obviously the histamine has already gone to the head once, because we do the whole coverage in one go and then we repeat it the next day. But the majority of clients, I would say, finds it quite not incredibly uncomfortable.
I've had it done. Obviously, I've had to be a guinea pig a couple of times for some new techniques that she wanted to try out, and I have a very low pain threshold, and I was fine. And also with Trico, we work a lot more superficial, so we tend to go only between 0.3 and 0.5 of a millimeter into the skin, so it's very, very superficial. So it's I didn't find it uncomfortable at all.
There seems to be some clear differences between the tricopigmentation technique and scalp micropigmentation technique. And one of those differences is the healing process and the presence of colour, and how the tricopigmentation heals. Can you just go through and explain to us visually, what you tend to see, and how, or the results, and when do they start to appear for tricopigmentation?
Okay. Yeah. So this goes back to the model of how we apply it. So if I can start at the beginning, we'll get to the end. The model that we use is, instead of using a needle and just gently putting it into the skin, we actually make the needle at 0.5 millimeters, so literally half a millimeter or slightly smaller, sticking out at the end of the needle cap. And that is our guide to placement. And the needle cap is obviously covered in pigment, and we need to make sure that it just deposits a circle on the skin. And then we know with that circle that we match those circles up into a daisy pattern, and we sort of test the area, have a look at it, and then we see if we can see dots that are smaller than the client's own hair follicle. So if we know that the client's own hair, those dots are smaller, we know that over the next few days, maybe up to 2 weeks, the pigment is going to expand in the skin. It's going to migrate in the skin, as all pigment does. And that also will depend on how much oil's in the skin, and obviously many, many contributing factors. But this is one of the big things, is that once the session is finished, I will say to the client that you probably won't see anything, because I will see these micro dots, and then over the next week or so, they then begin to come back to the surface, grow, enlarge slightly to become the size of the follicle, and that's when they become more obvious. So it is, whereas a lot of permanent scalp micropigmentation tends to be darker, then goes through a healing process and gets lighter. So for our clients, they can literally wash their hair, go and sort of have a cool shower. The big enemy is the same: perspiration, can't sweat, no exposure to extreme sunlight, but within 5 days it's probably healed in.
Yeah. It is so different. And I was lucky enough to watch you work in 2017, and I was just amazed, and I thought, I don't understand how this works. It's just so different to scalp micropigmentation. So, you know, if a client walks away and doesn't see anything, that is 100% correct. That means that they're most likely received good trichopigmentation, and it's just a waiting period of time for the result to actually appear and happen.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true. So it's really important that we tell this to the client as well, to, you know, to manage their expectations, because after the first session, it's really hard to see if there's anything there. I mean, we can see it because obviously Debbie's got a faint eye, but then over the next few days, they will start to see gradually the color appear and dots growing to the correct size. What also is important with tricopigmentation for us is to explain that, because it looks very different. The cap of the needle leaves a ring of pigment on the scalp, so you will see a really covered black hat in pigment, and people find it really scary and they think, oh my god. But basically those are just our guidelines to attach to get the right placement, and that all just wipes off the scalp. After we finish a certain section, we wipe it off.
It gives a sequence. I call it the daisy pattern. So we form like a flower. So it stops people trying to go in rows as well to make it look. So it's really natural. So we follow this daisy pattern of the little circles from the needle cap, and that gives us our it's a model for equidistant spacing. And then on day 2, we go back in and we create a new daisy pattern in between the dots that we had from the previous day. And then obviously the third session for the shaved effect would be just to target the areas that we would have maximum density, medium density, minimal density. So on your crown, for example, as we all know, you would have more density. Around the donor area, you'd have more density. So it's literally targeting those areas on the third session.
Yeah, brilliant. And how long is tricopigmentation designed to last?
Okay. Well, what we're trying to create is a colour that replicates the keratin of the protein that forms the hair follicle. So depending on skin colour and hair colour, we mix 2 products together. And the higher carbon black level that we have does stay longer in the skin. So it does vary from client to client. If somebody with medium brown hair, for example, with quite pale skin, you can expect after 2 years for a lot of it to have disappeared. Whereas the clients with a higher, where we've got more carbon black involved, it will last longer in the skin due to the nature of the product, even though it's implanted very, very superficially. So there's a couple of factors that are involved really in the fading process, and also exposure to sunlight, and obviously skin, and all the external factors. So on average, we ask people to come back annually for a maintenance session, which I can talk about pricing with you again in a minute, which just keeps it looking good. Which just keeps it looking great.
Yeah, lovely. So what type of client is best suited to the tricopigmentation method?
For me, definitely the men. Because women, because it will fade. For me, the guys, it is definitely the best, and also definitely post hair transplant clients who want to keep their hair, because eventually, you know, we have to look at decades down the line, and they will get, you know, they will age, and like me during lockup with the COVID. The grey is beginning to show. So at this point, when you have a semi-permanent that you just once a year have to have a maintenance session, you can adapt the colour as people age. And whereas if with the shaved effects, you can have, for me, then you can have a more permanent, and women are more likely to dye their hair, you know, if they start to grey. So, but it also, it means you haven't got a permanent choice. You don't have to make a choice forever, because sometimes I think people, a lot of people want, a quick fix for everything, but we know that life isn't like that. There isn't a quick fix. And I believe even with permanent SMP now, you know, I mean, when I first started, permanent SMP was, if you have it done now, you'll never have to have it done again in your life. And that's not true today. You know, things have changed, things are getting better. And I think everybody is moving towards almost a trend of it being able to fade, and then having it maintained as required, because, you know, when we all get grey and old and wrinkly, you know, we don't want to be having two-tone heads particularly.
Yeah, adaptability, I think, is very, very important, and that's what Trico can really offer. It's the same as permanent makeup, really. We don't really want to be working with tattoo colors on the face, particularly because they will stay for a long, long time. And obviously, as people age, your face changes. So we want to be able to adapt your look as you age. And it's the same. It's the same with men and their hairline as you get older. So it just gives you a bit more flexibility in the future to adapt and change. And it's a really good flexible solution, I think.
It's quite fun knowing it'll fade as well. If you've got somebody who isn't really dark skinned with really black hair, you can put a razor line in that they would have maybe done at the barbers, or some kind of trendy thing if they're quite young, knowing that it's going to fade completely, because it's not something that wouldn't necessarily suit them once they get to my age. So it has a little bit more versatility, I think. That's just coming from my opinion.
Yeah, I've heard some stories also of people that want to have the treatment done, but they don't want to immediately go for a more permanent solution. They want to experience it first. So Trico could also be an option to start with, when eventually people might want a more permanent solution.
Yeah.
Brilliant. It's a good stepping stone. Or they may love it so much that they're just happy to continue on the tricopigmentation path.
I do have recurring clients that just have been with me for years. So some have chosen to go down the permanent route, but I would say the majority of my clients they keep coming back, and it's great. You know, you build great relationships. It's a real emotional confidence boost to anybody that suffers with hair loss. And that, you know, we make friends in this industry, don't we? You know, we make it's different. You know, we're in the service industry, and we're actually changing lives, which is wonderful.
And that's the same, I think, with scalp micropigment, tricopigmentation. Doesn't matter if you see how much it means to your client. I think that's a very rewarding part of the job, and that's why so many people love it.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree with you there. So you touched on the maintenance side of tricopigmentation just briefly. What happens at a maintenance session, say like an annual review? What happens at a treatment there?
Because everything's done by hand, and obviously you've got areas on the dermis that are slightly thicker and thinner, and you've always got that little bit of where the pigment's gone slightly deeper or it's gone slightly shallower. It is giving, so you've got 2 points. The colour has faded slightly, so you want to boost up the colour, and where it's gone weaker, you want to address a little bit more in that area, really. So it's just giving it a good shape up and make it look fresh again.
Yeah, lovely. And let's have a chat about perhaps the costs involved with tricopigmentation versus the traditional scalp micropigmentation. You know, are they fairly well on par in terms of cost?
I think it's, for me, I think it's hard to comment because I know that the cost of the cost in the UK varies considerably in the scalp micropigment in the permanent SMP, let's call it, just for now. So I would charge on approximately for a Norwood 7 shaved effects, I would charge £1,500. So that's British pounds. And for a density a little bit more, if we're looking lower down the Norwood scale, I bring it around the £1,000 mark. I work out really approximately what it's going to, how many hours it's going to take me, and how much work's going to be involved in it, really. So, and then the maintenance session is I break that down into the cost of what would be an initial treatment. Yeah. Really.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So I think the initial layout of Trico is probably a little bit, on average, a little bit lower. But obviously we will have annual maintenance sessions. So I think in general they will be reasonably even.
So I really believe clients need to choose either the tricopigmentation or the more permanent solution based on what they want to get out of the longevity, not based on price, because I feel that they're very well on similar levels. It's really looking into what is best suited to the client and what maintenance they want and what effect they want and flexibility they want out of their results.
Yeah, absolutely. And this way you can give your clients the choice. So you can give them the choice to choose either this solution or that solution. And I think that's something really really valuable for scalp clinics.
Yeah, brilliant. So the machinery is quite different. The equipment that you use is quite different for tricopigmentation. How can a client be sure that their artist is properly trained and qualified in the tricopigmentation technique?
Well, they have to complete a training course for basically to be able to do it. We sell machines that we can preset. We know that we can preset the needle, and we use a rough needle, not a smooth needle, so not a tattoo needle. So it is rounded, it's not sharp. And some machines it doesn't always have to be our machine, but some machines can be used and will preset the needle. But I don't like the tattoo machines for this because the needle is pointed, and also the way that it isn't rough, so the pigment doesn't flow down the needle quite the same. But having, once you've got a machine that will do the job, then obviously training is obviously the most important thing that you need to do, and practice. So originally our courses ran for a month. They were 4 days practice work and then 4 days working on models. But sadly, due to the market, everybody wanted to do a 2-day course, a 1-day course, and we've now had to concise our training down into sort of 4 or 5 days, 5 days for a beginner. But then obviously we need a portfolio on, and I want to see some practice. But there aren't many trainers outside of beauty medical that teach this model. This model, I was the first international trainer outside of beauty medical, and you've got to come on course. You've got to be in it to win it, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a combination of things. Tricopigmentation is not just the machine or the needle. It's a combination of a lot of factors. Obviously, the machine, the needle, also the pigments that we use are slightly different. We use a combination of hydrophilic and hydrophobic, organic and inorganic, which gives us the correct compound of material to work with. And then technique also is a big part of it. It's just slightly different from normal scalp micropigmentation. So it's a combination of factors that make up tricopigmentation.
It isn't the easy option though either. Everybody thinks, oh well, if you just preset in the machine to 0.5, you're fine. Just like it is with anything, it takes skill.
Yeah,
it takes skill and practice.
We try and reduce the risk with having the needle set to that length so you can't go any deeper. But obviously if you start stabbing somebody really with a lot of force, you're still going to go a bit deeper. So it's not foolproof, but we manage to reduce the risk a lot. And usually when we train, what Debbie will do is she'll actually put the needle even lower, just to make sure that the students don't go too deep on the first session, and then we will correct it afterwards.
Well, I say to obviously any models that come in for training and any clients, for example, you know, if for some reason we haven't got enough, we can do another session because it isn't a mistake. It's a mistake when the needle's too long, it's gone too deep, and then we have a problem.
Yeah.
So, but that's the same for both, I think.
Yeah, definitely. So thank you so much for having a chat today to us about the tricopigmentation. It is still, I believe, a treatment that is not as well recognised as the scalp micropigmentation. It's very specific and quite unique. So thank you so much for sharing your tips and tricks and information on tricopigmentation today, guys.
Thank you.
I'm tired.
No, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for including us in your podcast. It's been nice to catch up and
thank you
to see that you're still well, and you know everything is hopefully going back to normal very soon.
Yeah.
Stay safe there out in Australia.
Yes, absolutely, and same to you. So if you have any comments or questions, we want to hear from you. As always, don't be shy. Give us a call or an email. Pop something in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on any updates as we release our latest content. So thanks for watching, and we hope to see you soon. See you guys.
Bye. Bye.